Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Facetly. My name is Amber, and on this channel, I talk about all things women, but this channel is not just for women. A couple of days ago, I actually posted a video, and that video was talking about women in the Bible and how we can look at these women and see that their accomplishments and the reasons that they were highlighted, that their stories were told in the Bible really didn't have anything to do with marriage, at least these ones that I'm pointing out here. And why that's important is because a lot of women, whether they're Christians or not, but I really want to say specifically in the church, the Christian church, um, our value, it seems to be dependent on whether or not we've been chosen for marriage, whether or not we've been selected or we've agreed to get married to somebody. I'm 50 years old and I'm not married and never have been married. There's nothing wrong with that. And I want to talk about these things because there are women who desire marriage or who might feel a little bit ostracized from their community because either culturally or religiously, there's a high value that is placed on women who are married versus women who are not. And especially even in this, I don't want to say this economy, but this culture where we're looking at a lot of red pill channels that are really trying to promote a woman's value as being, you, you're worthless after a certain age. Your job specifically is to, you know, either get married and have kids, stay at home, watch after the kids, support your husband, cook his food, make him a sandwich, whatever it is. That's their idea of how women should be. And it's also important because in this political climate, whether you're paying attention to it or not, it is a time where women's rights they're kind of on the burner here. Like they are, I don't know. I don't know exactly what is intended to happen from this besides women being placed back into the handmaid's tale or something of that nature. Um, I just really want women to understand, and not just women. Like I said, this channel is not just for women, although we talk about women's issues a lot. Women's value is far beyond just, being a wife and a mother. And I'm not going to disparage that because, especially for motherhood, and I'm going to say that as a mom, and I'm not saying especially for motherhood because you need to be having kids if you don't want kids. I think a woman should be able to choose whether or not she wants to have kids or not. Everybody knows their own capabilities and their own limits and their own desires for what they want in their life. What I say is, especially as a mother, that's a difficult job, child. Woo, flashbacks. But actually, it's just like it's something. These are things that are very important. But I want to again talk about these women from the Bible who, regardless of whether they were married or not, and a lot of them probably were during that time period because of the time period and the expectations and protections for women surrounding having a man in their life, whether it was their father, an older brother, an older uncle, if they weren't married, or their husband. That was a necessity back then. It's not so much a necessity these days. But I just want to show that a lot of these stories that were either glossed over or even highlighted in the Bible as being like, oh, this is the end all be all of this woman's existence. She got married and that's what happened and yay. These stories are a lot deeper than that. So I want to start with actually Ruth for this episode. Now I got to get my notes. Okay, so Ruth's story. Now, Ruth, I'm starting with her because Ruth's story for Christian women, we pretty much know it. It's almost like we know it by heart. There are books, there are movies, there are Bible studies based on Ruth and her ability to gain favor from and get a husband after some very trying circumstances. Now, Ruth, she can be found in the book of Ruth, which is very convenient for us. But Ruth, she was actually a woman from a land called Moab. And so she met up with her husband, who was an Israelite, because her husband's brother, so her brother-in-law and also her father-in-law, they had all come to Moab as they were escaping some issues in their home country. Now, in that culture, the Israelites, so Ruth's husband, they weren't supposed to be marrying outside of their culture. So for them to have married, so for Ruth's husband and also Ruth's brother-in-law, they both married Moabite women or women from Moab. Ruth was one of the women that was married. After a while, the father-in-law passed away. The Ruth's husband passed away, and also Ruth's brother-in-law passed away. That left Ruth's mother-in-law, Naomi, Ruth's sister-in-law, Orpah, and Ruth all stuck in Moab. And while they were in Moab, even in Moab, I should say, they weren't free to kind of just do whatever they wanted to do. Naomi decided, hey, I'm going to go back home. My daughters-in-law, our husbands are gone. There's nothing left for me here. You're young. You guys can just stay here in Moab and get married. Just find a new husband. You'll be fine. I'm going to go back home and figure it out. Orpah went. Orpah, she's like, gotcha. Deuces, I'm out. I'm going back home. But it was something about Ruth. Ruth and Naomi. Ruth had learned a lot from her mother-in-law. And so Ruth basically said, no, I'm going to stay with you. And I guess her famous quote was that she was going to go wherever Naomi was going to go. Your God will be my God. Your country will be my country. I will live and die with you in your country. And so even though Naomi was like, no, girl, just stay here. I'll figure it out there. You just do you out here in Moab. Ruth refused. Ruth went with her mother-in-law. Now, once they got back, they actually came across Boaz. Now, Boaz is a huge figure, I guess, in this story, because he was a very wealthy man. He owned many fields. He had, people there who were working for him and gleaning from the fields. He also was what was called a kinsman redeemer for Naomi's family. The kinsman redeemer part is not important to this story, so I'm going to kind of skip over it a little bit. But Naomi knew this, and Naomi said to Ruth, hey, there's a man who, because of our family and because of our lineage, he is supposed to take over and marry you. Now, there's a man in front of him who's supposed to do it before him, but if he decides he doesn't want to do it, this man, Boaz, he might be, the man that can restore you, who can marry you and everything. So Naomi was talking to Ruth and gave her some advice, and Ruth, she went out there to Boaz's fields and she began to collect wheat behind his actual workers. Boaz saw her, he just probably thought she was really cute or whatever. But I think the one thing that he really noticed about her was her hard work, her work ethic. And then once he had learned more about her, finding out that one, she was not from his country, she was from Moab. But the fact that she had come to support her mother-in-law, to help her, to make sure that she wasn't going to be alone. Because obviously Ruth didn't know she was going to run into her future husband. She had no idea, and that was not her plan. She just wanted to go with her mother-in-law to be a support. Her mother-in-law had encouraged her enough to where she's like, I'm going to love on my mother-in-law and I am going to go where she goes. And that's it. That's final. Now, Boaz heard that that's what Ruth had done, and he was really impressed by that too, because she had integrity. She had a sense of caring, of nurturing for a woman that she didn't have to have that sense of nurturing or caring for if she didn't want to. The other sister-in-law had said, okay, I'm good. I'm going to stay here. The other sister-in-law did not take that opportunity to say, no, I'm going to stay with you too. She went back, which is fine. That's her thing. Ruth's story was different. So ultimately, yes, Boaz was able to win Ruth as his wife. I shouldn't say win, but I mean win her hand, win her favor, things like that. But the thing that actually really sticks out for me with Ruth isn't the fact that she got married, even though that seems to be the big, big thing that they celebrate about Ruth in the church, is that, she worked hard. She gained favor from this man, and she was able to get married. And through that marriage, she was also able to redeem her mother-in-law, because her mother-in-law, again, she's a woman who has no man at the headship of her situation. Back then, that was very dangerous. But after she got married, she was also able to take care of her mother-in-law. What I find endearing about the story is that she was courageous. She left her home. She left everything that she knew to follow her mother-in-law. She left, and she was basically designating herself as her mother-in-law's caretaker. Again, she had no idea what was going to happen when she went to this new country, even if she would have been accepted. What would have happened if Naomi would have said, you know what, I'm a little tired, and said, okay, Ruth, you can just go on and do you somewhere. But, Ruth would have been all by herself, unprotected in a land that she didn't know. But she was brave. It was her bravery. It was her courage, and also her work ethic. She was not there initially trying to get Boaz's attention. She was collecting wheat or grain or whatever it was behind Boaz's workers to help feed her and her mother-in-law. Those were her strengths. The fact that she got married was like, ooh, great. But again, that's not the main point of the story. She was a woman who was strong. She was courageous. She was nurturing. She was a caretaking type of woman, and she was very intelligent. So that's why Ruth's story is another story where we can see that the highlight, even though man is made the highlight, marriage, the story focuses so much more on just her character, the kind of woman that she was. So I love the book of Ruth too. I love Ruth and Esther. Those are my two favorites. The next two women actually that I want to talk about are Martha and Mary. Now, Martha and Mary, there are several Marys in the Bible, but this Mary is actually the sister of Lazarus. So both Martha and Mary are the sisters of Lazarus, who, if you don't know, Lazarus was the one individual who Jesus raised from the dead. Okay, so I'm not going to get into that whole story, but I'm going to start with Martha. Now, Martha is oftentimes kind of looked at a little bit negatively in the Bible. And the reason she is looked at a little negatively is because she was hosting Jesus and his disciples in her home. And so she was busying herself. She's trying to get the meals prepared. She's trying to make sure things are clean and make sure things are appropriate, which I guess for somebody like me, I understand. There might have been a perfectionist type streak in her. I don't know. But she knows that she is hosting, the King of Kings, essentially. And they're friends, but she still wants to make sure that they feel comfortable in her home. So she's doing all of this while her sister Mary is just sitting at the feet of Jesus and just looking at him, gazing at him adoringly, and just listening and taking in all of the wisdom that he's speaking. So Martha gets a little perturbed. She's a little like, I'm not just going to be the only one over here slaving and doing stuff, okay? So Martha actually talks to Jesus and says, do you see that my sister is here and she's not helping? Can you have her help me? And Jesus, he chastises her a little bit, and he basically says, you're busying yourself doing this, that, and the third, but Mary has chosen the better thing, to just sit and be with him. And I think it was another story, but it makes sense because Jesus knew that he was going to be crucified eventually, that he didn't have very much time left amongst these people. And so instead of trying to, let's say, give him flowers after he was passed away, and I don't want to say passed away because I do believe that he was resurrected, but you know what I mean, to give him his flowers after, Mary had decided to give him his flowers, the admiration and the respect, and spending time with him now as he was here on the earth. And actually, let's see, just got interrupted with a call. Losing my train of thought. Okay. So Martha, she was told that, okay, this is what you should have been doing. Now, I tell that story for a couple of reasons. Martha lived with her brother. Both Mary and Martha lived with their brother, Lazarus, which likely means that during that time, they weren't married. It seems like none of them were married. I didn't hear anything anywhere, talking about husbands or anything like that. And so it's very likely that Lazarus was probably the man in the household that was supposed to be a protection for his sisters. So with Martha doing all of these things, it is estimated, it is believed that she was a very industrious woman, that she also, we're not entirely sure if she was the homeowner, but a lot of scholars do believe that she owned the property. And so for her to have property at that time, that was very, very unusual. And even if she didn't own the property, she was at the very least, a very, very good caretaker of the property. That's why she wanted to make sure everything was right and everything was ready and prepared. She definitely knew how to host. She wanted to do things to make people feel special, important, and comfortable. Now, another thing about Martha is when their brother, like I said, Lazarus had died. And so they had sent message information over to Jesus. Jesus was somewhere else in another area. And they wanted him to come as soon as possible because they knew their brother was sick. Both Mary and Martha were like, Jesus, please come. They were friends with Jesus. And so they said, please come, please come. We know you can help our brother. He's very, very sick. Well, Jesus didn't come in time. He did that on purpose, but he didn't come in time. And so, by the time he came back, Martha had gone out to meet him and said, you're too late. You're too late. Why didn't you come in time? So that's another thing, was she is very, again, courageous. She is a caretaker. She was caring for her brother and caring for what happened to him. And, ultimately, Jesus did bring Lazarus back to life. But that was another thing. And that's probably something that would be a little bit overlooked as well. For women to be friends with a man, that was very unusual. But that was also unusual, and it's something that can be looked at from Jesus's standpoint as being, I don't know what else to say, but being very against the grain of the time. He considered women to be important He considered women to be equals. He didn't look at women as, like, oh, I can't be your friend. You're a woman. Go do something. Go in the house somewhere. Go do whatever. But I got to go back to Martha. The last thing I can say about Martha is she was just very, very, I don't know, studious. Is that the word that I want to talk about? I'm not sure. Let me get my mind together. Hold on. Okay, got it. Studious is the appropriate word. She was very studious. They were friends. Like I said, they were friends with Jesus. And she was one to continue following him and learning from him. And I'm going to say the same is true of Mary. Mary did it in a different way, obviously. Martha's sister, she was the one who really just, she knew the importance of needing to soak up the wisdom that Jesus had. She felt, I think, the importance of remaining by his side and just being present, fully present with him. Again, neither of these women, at least from what we could tell, neither one of them were married. And so these are two other women who were important in the life of Jesus in the Bible. And even though their stories aren't told as much as maybe some of the other women, they just show that, at least in my opinion, God has a different interpretation of what is important for women. He understands and he knows that not every single woman is going to get married. Not every woman is going to want to get married. But the key is, are you living your life the way that would please and honor God? Married or not, the importance of marriage, especially nowadays, not so much then, but nowadays is very, very much man promoted instead of being something that is biblically promoted. And I'll talk more about that at the end. Now, another woman that I want to talk about in this video, before it gets too long, is Mary Magdalene. Now, Mary Magdalene, she is mentioned many, many times in the Bible, and there have been many, I want to say, conspiracy theories, rumors, something about her, where there are people who actually think that Mary Magdalene and Jesus were married. There's nothing in the Bible anywhere that says anything about that. And I truly do not believe that that was the case. I think it would have been highlighted more, especially throughout the Gospels. You've got Luke, you've got John, you have Mark. None of these Gospels spoke anything about Jesus having a wife. Nothing. Wife and children, no less. So, but Mary Magdalene, let me get back to the point. Mary Magdalene, she was a woman that Jesus had come across. And at the time that he met her, she had demons inside of her. I think it's like 7 demons. And so he brought those demons out of her. And after that, she became just a loyal follower. She gave her money to support his travels or his ministry, so to speak. She pretty much, from what I can understand, was always there. She was always listening. She was always learning, and she was always so happy and so grateful to support him. Now, one of the most important things that I saw in the Bible that Mary Magdalene had done was she had stayed. When Jesus was being crucified on the cross, she was there. She, one of his apostles, I can't think of the name at the moment, but also his mother Mary. They were the 3 people that remained at the cross all the way up until and after Jesus took his last breath on the cross. Some of his other followers, his apostles, they had hidden, they'd run away. I think at that point had probably felt like, oh, well, we, one, don't want to be I guess, hunted down or persecuted by the army or the government at the time, and probably also felt that we made the wrong choice. If he really was who we thought he was, which was the Son of God, then how could he die? How could he actually die? That was something that they felt shouldn't have happened. And so Mary Magdalene, she stayed. Now, in 3 days, Jesus Christ rose. And we're actually, at least this year, Resurrection Day, as we call it in my community, is tomorrow. So I do want to wish you a happy Resurrection Day, a happy Easter if you celebrate. And, I'm so thankful that he did rise from the dead and give himself as a sacrifice to just forgive all of our sins. Now I'm going to get back to Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene, by some scholars, is considered the first evangelist because she was the one who she had gone back to the tomb where they had enshrined Jesus. And on that third day, she went there and she was expecting, to do things to help prepare the body. She was going to, take care of the body and take care of whatever needed to be taken care of around the tomb. But she noticed he was gone. His body was gone. She ran back to tell his disciples, who were still hiding, by the way. They were still hiding. They were still probably just questioning their themselves, their thought processes. What have we been doing all this time? But she ran back and she told them, he's gone. He has risen. He lives again. And I think that is the most amazing, the most amazing responsibility for her to be selected as a woman, to be selected and to go out and spread this good news to other people. It's just, again, that's something that had nothing to do with whether or not she was married. In fact, I don't think there was anything in there in the Bible to show that she was married. So it was just, that's just another wonderful thing. Now, I'm probably going to have one more video on this topic and then I'm going to stop, at least for this series. But I do want to say that if you are married, that's beautiful for you. If you are not married, that's beautiful for you. See how that works? You see how that works? Again, I'm not disparaging marriage. And if you want to be married, because like I said, I still would like to be married. I would. He'd have to be a very, very sent by Jesus kind of guy. He really would. But if I never do get married, I'm satisfied. I'm doing the things that I do believe that Jesus wants me to do. And so with that, don't disparage yourself because there might be people in your family, people in your church, or maybe even a childhood dream that you had that, oh, I should have been married by now. I should have had kids by now. That's not going to be everybody's destiny. And it's not something that should be disparaged. There will be single women. There will be women who, at the end of their lives, will have been single their entire lives. There will be women who maybe marry for a while and then don't ever marry again. There will be women who marry later in life. There will be women who are just married from almost the end of high school all the way through to the end of their lives. Everybody's journey is different. Everybody has a place and everybody has value. Your marital status has nothing to do with that. And if you look at the Bible, you're going to see that God didn't highlight marital status for, most of the women who were talked about in this Bible. And for many of them, even if they were married, that was not the end all be all. This is why they're highlighted, because they're married. It was the things that they did the way that they were behaving, the way that they were obedient to, just, obedient to God, obedient to Christ and what needed to happen at that time. So, I do hope that I didn't ramble too much in this one. But thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Facetly. If you know anybody who would like to hear this or who needs to hear this, please, please, please share. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to hear more about women's stuff, just all kinds of things. And I'm getting back to perimenopause very soon, so that is important. But anyway, smooches, toodles, love y'all. Talk to you soon. Like, share, subscribe. Bye bye.